Hello, I'm your host, Peter Komendowski, and welcome to Surviving Bad, where we explore stories of survival, hope, and inspiration. We're joined today by two media literacy experts from Singapore, a country that has invested a significant amount of resources to teach children how to safely manage digital experiences. Young Chun Po, founder of the Media Literacy School, and Grace Lee, an instructional designer, have actually helped develop digital literacy curricula for Iowa schools. Their work in Singapore gives them a unique perspective on youth and the media. Let's meet our guests and find out why. Welcome to the show. Hello, Young Chun.
Hi.
Hello, Grace.
Thank you.
Grace,
It's good
tell
to
us a
be
little
here.
bit about yourself and what you do, and then we'll let Young Chun tell us about the Media Literacy School.
Well, my name is Grace, and I'm a principal trainer and instructional designer with Media Literacy School. I've been working here for a good 9 years. I started really young, and I'm still quite young, so it's been a really good learning process, and I think I have the itch to connect well with the young people we work with, and it's been really, really rewarding learning from the curriculum that we teach and just passing it forward to the people I meet. So I really do enjoy my work, and I think there's good value in what we do in Singapore and around the world, yeah.
You met with a great reception when you presented at Iowa's Digital Literacy Conference, great energy, and I think your youth gave you such a tremendous understanding of the market that we're dealing with, and your professionalism and intelligence, exceeds your youth. I hope that's taken as a compliment. Young Chun, you've started a great movement there. You've had collaborations with Iowa State here and other professionals, but your Media Literacy School is really doing great things in Singapore. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
Well, I've personally been involved in media literacy for about 20 years. And early in the days, I got to meet Dr. Douglas Gentile from Iowa State. And, we worked together quite a fair bit. And core of what we do back then was actually designing intervention programs to help young people who are pathological internet users or pathological gamers. So in the past 10 years though, the work for Media Literacy School has really taken a whole new different level. I think we began, to develop a curricula that's been widely adopted in the schools in Singapore. So out of the 360 schools in a small country, we've been to probably about 250 schools. And we've also brought the same program to Cambodia, to Vietnam, to Malaysia. And of course, we have the privilege to also visit Iowa State. And so that in a nutshell is what we do. We seek to connect with young people to help them to use the media and the internet in a way that benefits themselves and others. Yeah.
Now, this is fascinating because I know oftentimes our first instinct, for me especially, is that Singapore is a small country. But Singapore has a lot of people, and it's a very dense country. As I understand it, Singapore has over 220 times the number of people living per square kilometer or square mile as we do in the United States. So there are a lot of people. What's the total population of Singapore?
Well, at the moment, it's probably about 5 million. Okay, so Singaporeans and of course foreigners included. Yeah, I mean, one way to think about Singapore would be, the densest cities you have in the United States. What would that be? New York, and it's just 40 kilometers, from east to west, and about 30 kilometers from north to south. And that's the entire country. So, within this small area, about 600 over square kilometers, 5 million people live.
So as you've pointed out to me in the past, when children need time to get away or an escape, the space is not as liberal as we have here in America. That the internet and social media has been for many years the place where children go to find their place.
Yeah, certainly. So, I mean, the United States is a wonderful place. There's so much space. The national parks, people are involved in sports, outdoors. There's plenty of facilities. But in Singapore, all of us live in high-rise buildings. So, probably 100 square meter, 110 square meters, for average household of 5 or 6 people, right? That, that's is that kind of space. And living in a high-rise city, most of the time, young people, they do pursue a lot of their activities online. So I guess that's something that's probably quite different from the United States.
Well, we'll talk about some of those things that are different and some of the things that are the same. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to continue the conversation.
I don't know how we would have survived without Mediacom. We have 5 kids, my wife and I, and we have Mediacom for all of our internet and all of our cable services. So I'm stuck in my house, but at the same time, I'm connected to people all over the world, and it's been fantastic.
Thanks to Mediacom, I've had reliable internet to continue to work business as usual, that I can continue to provide for myself and my family.
Right now, we all feel like the world is in a standstill. The internet has played a huge role in allowing us to stay connected to our jobs and the kids' schooling online and finding fun and creative ways to stay connected with the ones that we love. We couldn't do it without Mediacom.
Welcome back to Surviving Bad. We're talking about the world our children live in, the digital world, and how important it is to teach them sort of the rules of the road when it comes to the internet and digital experiences, and what the challenges are today for parents and children with not just the pandemic, but the big increase in the amount of time people spend on the media. Young Sharon, you work with parents and teachers and educators all the time. What are some of the things that are really important today?
Well, I'm not quite sure how the situation in Singapore is, may differ, from the United States. But I think in general, the average 10 to 12-year-old child spends about 40 hours a week, facing screens. And that's non-academic related work. So just, entertainment, videos, games, and social media, and of course, messaging. Yeah. By the time they hit their teenage years, the average 14-year-old child would be spending easily 60 to 70 hours per week. Now, when you realize that there are only 168 hours per week, and probably, each person only has about 90 hours to decide what they want to do with their time. The rest of the time is spent sleeping or in school, where they are, the screen time is kind of limited. The average young person today really spends about 75% of their available free time facing a screen. So that is one of the fastest changes that have come upon us, in a matter of years. And of course, during COVID-19, this probably would have increased another 20-30% because the kids wake up, they're at home, confined within 100 square meters. That's all they can do. Yeah.
We've talked to teachers here, and they're very intimidated, many of them, with teaching online, but not because they're not competent as teachers, not because they don't have teaching tools and materials, but because the competition for attention that comes from the media is at such a high level. I mean, these are like feature films. They have huge production budgets. They are designed to entertain children. Grace, how do you look at an instructional platform in the context of that the child is always, and then an adult too, one click away from really, really, really complex and effective forms of entertainment?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, over here in Singapore, we've actually been running a whole 2-week-long series of webinars for professionals and parents. And one of the things we shared with the parents and teachers was also that, even way back when it was just television as a form of media and entertainment for a lot of children, it's really difficult for a teacher or parent to compete with the 1-second refresh rate of a television on screen. And that's what Yang Cheng shared with the teachers, right? And now with media and my little niece, her name's Caitlin, and from a young age, the iPad, it's really instinctive. They know to open and close apps, close tabs whenever it gets so boring, and it's they boredom is not so much a big part of her life when she was growing up, because the tech just constantly engaged her. And I think one of the big things we strive to do at Media Literacy School is and the reason why our program works so well with young people is because we persuade and we don't prescribe. We really don't come in and say screen time is bad, games are bad, destroy your computers, burn your phones. No, we actually share our stories with them, and I personally share with them my own struggles with. I love Instagram, and that's my thing, right? I'll share with them, how I grew up with a Nokia phone back then, and then at 17 years old, I got my my first iPhone, and how life has been for me since then. And youths are really receptive to us because we just present them with stories and facts and let them arrive at the conclusion themselves, to realize that, hey, maybe there's something off about the way my relationship with tech has been. And typically the feedback we get from young people is that after a few hours worth of program with them, they write areas for improvement. We would like to have this program a bit longer. We want to learn more, or this is the only program I didn't fall asleep in. And it's wonderful to hear feedback like that from young people, and to have them open up with us with their own honest experiences as well, to collect these stories from young people. And it's been really wonderful. Yeah.
And this is one reason that we really work hard with school programming here, because we can bring that sort of peer-to-peer relationship where we empower youth. And I know that you've been a strong supporter of that. Now, in this isolation period we have with the pandemic, though, we have a situation where rather than great programs and instruction, we now have parents having to be the Grace Lee in the home, and their competency levels are not so high. Young Chern, how do you deal with that when you look at, how does a parent establish themselves to deal with these issues when they're not competent at dealing with all this technology?
Well, it's, like you said, it's not that teachers or parents don't have the ability to teach. I'm sure, they know how to. But I think the key here is really youth engagement. How do you speak to young people in a way that helps them to understand? Grace was talking about how she would tell her own journey, with Instagram and with the iPhone. 15 years ago, when I started, doing video gaming intervention, I would be telling my own story. Back in the 1980s, the kind of games I would play, why I would be the kind of person who, goes after achievement. When some of my friends really go for the friendships, and yet, there are those who seek, just variation and choices, So when we are able to share with them our own journeys and recognize that these are powerful and necessary drives, okay, for achievement, for friendship, for autonomy, kids understand. In fact, it's quite common that even for, let's say, 7-year-old kids who listen into our programs, they are able to identify in 5 minutes why they love video games. So, stories like this, just being honest with them, does connect with them. And they will be the ones that tell me, my son, by the time he was a P1, he told me, Daddy, I play because I want to win. And over the years...
I tell you what, I'd like to talk about that connection. We're going to take a short break and really talk about the connection and the exchanges between children and parents, and maybe a case where children might be able to help teach the parents, just like you're showing us. After the break, we're going to continue this conversation and ask young Chern and Grace to talk about how they see the world changing. You don't want to miss this.
Today, more than ever, you need fast, reliable internet. At Mediacom, we want you to know you can count on us. Our fiber-powered 100% gigabit technology network was built for the future. We have enormous capacity and power and 99.99% network reliability. So even though these are uncertain times, we're prepared. And you can be certain we'll keep your world connected.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
Right now, millions of people and billions of devices are connected to the internet. Homes, businesses, hospitals, schools. The security and reliability of these connections are more important than ever. That's why at Mediacom, we've built a network to protect them. A network that sees threats, fixes problems before they occur, and keeps you going with 99.99% network reliability.
Welcome back to Surviving Bad. Now, the pandemic's changed our minds, and we're now more digital than ever. We'd like to take a look at a little bit about how the world is changing and get young Chern and Grace's view on what they see in terms of the world changing in this time of changing priorities and changing influence of the media. Grace, what would you like to add?
Well, actually, one of the big things I always tell my students at the end of the program, I always say this to them. I say, your generation is the first generation that's going through a world with digital smartphones in your hands. Your parents didn't have smartphones when they were your age. Many of your teachers didn't have smartphones when they were your age. And, like I share, I only got mine at 17 years old. And so I tell them really honestly that we don't have all the answers for you. And your generation needs to find the answers for yourself. And what we have done in our program is really just to present you with some research and some handles for you to think about and to consider. And it's really to encourage these conversations to continue to happen among themselves. That once I walk out of the classroom after the workshop, what are the conversations that would continue when they head out for their recess? And I think one of the big things, just referencing what you said earlier about having youths help each other, we really always push for mutual accountability among classmates. And it's really fun because they find their own creative ways to do that. So when it comes to screen time, our students tell us, and they recommended, hey, Miss Grace, we use this app called Forest app. And basically they challenge each other to plant digital trees on their phones and to try to make it into a class game where they try to grow as many trees as they can without touching their phones and setting aside. So it's really wonderful if they can get each other across the finish line, because what friends do for each other, perhaps they'll be quite irritated when the parents do it for them, even though it's the same thing, Yeah, so I think that's one of the things.
Yeah, I think that's an area we call digital citizenship. And you make an important point that citizenship begins in the heart and the mind of the people and the users. It's not a set of arbitrary rules that are created, that people get a strong sense of feeling of what's right and wrong. And young Chern, you've been around for a while. How does that feeling of right and wrongness translate to decision making when children are engaged with media and parents?
Well, I think one of the things that really changed for parents is that we now live in a world where we, like Grace said, we don't have the answers. And I think, parents really need to be very curious. We need to be learning from young people. And as much as our collective wisdom from our experience, we can dictate that certain things should not happen. We also need to be really open-minded to study and to interact with our kids to understand how then do we adjust some of the approaches that we have. But one other thing that I thought is really important is that I think parents need to understand that while this is a whole new world and we must be open to new things, kids are kids, and young children depend on us to protect them. So there's a tendency that young people, parents may think, oh, it's a different age. We should be, more liberal with them. However, you must remember that, at a young age, kids can't really decide for themselves. And it is every bit, important for the parent to really come in and to regulate the environment. Well, of course, at a certain time, I think parents need to be open and curious so that we don't impose our worldview and experiences in a totally different world.
So in a very interesting way, we're asking parents to be more childlike, to explore their relative innocence and curiosity by engaging their children in this new digital world. I think these are great points. We're going to take a short break. And then when we come back, we're going to ask our guests to share some final comments and some good advice on how to deal with digital literacy in your home. See you after the break. You don't want to miss this.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
While a lot is changing in our world, at Mediacom, our focus remains the same, making sure you have the fastest, most reliable connection possible. During this critical time, we know your needs are changing. You may be working or learning from home, relying on telemedicine, or finding new ways to keep everyone entertained. If you need more speed, call or go online, and Mediacom will double your speed immediately for as low as $10 more a month for 1 year.
Thank you for joining us on Surviving Bad. We're talking about the dramatic increase in youth media experiences and the new digital universe filled with risks and benefits. We've asked our experts to share some advice about a digital lifestyle. Young Chern, what would you recommend to parents in terms of advice? I know it's a big thing.
Well, most of the time when parents do come to us, it usually is during a time where they are already, experiencing difficulties. But one of the most important things I would always say to parents that you have to start from the time where your kids are really young. The key word I would say, for those phases of life would be you must establish healthy defaults. Okay, what do I mean by that? By default, if a child is bored, he has something on, what does he do? So establishing healthy defaults would be would mean that they must, be able to experience life, learn how to play, learn how to handle time, without necessarily going to digital devices. Okay, so I made my kids learn how to read from a young age. They were widely exposed to sports and to many other forms of entertainment, right from the time they were young. Now that's important because that's a good foundation. Okay, before it's inevitable at some point in time, digital devices and technology will invade their lives. Once that happens, typically in a primary school, when they are 7, 8 years old, then is really a challenge because technology is so is designed to hold their attention. Now, by then though, the one thing that parents I think need to be very mindful of is that our role is really there to draw a healthy boundary for them so that within those boundaries, it's safe. So that would mean, maybe for some parents, not giving digital devices at too early an age when they're unable to resist some of the, the nudges, the ways in which the different companies tend to try to engage our kids. So that has to be held up, till a point of time where kids learn, begin to develop self-regulation. Okay, of course it happens all through, but we all know that teenagers are probably the most impulsive and just beginning to grow in self-regulation. Okay, So though that would really form a good foundation for the first 10, 12 years. And after that though, it's all about engaging teenagers. Okay. And maybe I thought to pass the time to Grace to talk a little bit about that.
So I'll talk to the young people who already have a device. I think one of the big things we see among the youth in Singapore is that it's very common that they plug in and listen to music when they're studying. More than half of the students we survey actually say they listen to music when they study. So I'll just tell you, if you do that as well, I don't know about teens in America, but I suppose habits could be similar. The music that you listen to makes a difference. Not all music is created equal. And ultimately, whatever type of music you listen to, intelligible lyrics, or if you're into K-pop and you don't quite understand the words, but ultimately when you take your exam, remember that are your teachers going to play music for you in the exam hall? If the answer is no, then my second advice for you is really about building up your capacity for sustained focus. So some kids come to us and say, hey, I really can't deal with revision and homework without distractions, but it's such a habit already. What do I do? And so the advice we give to kids is really to slowly build up that capacity. So from set your timer, 25 minutes, just put everything away, study, and then you build that up, 40 minutes, 50 minutes, now go for an hour. It's just like if you run a marathon, you don't go for 42 kilometers straight away, but you want to, or miles in over in America, but it's to build up that capacity. And we find that the most effective students, studies have also found that they don't sit through long, low quality stretches, but what they do is that they go for high intensity in blocked intervals, and that's what we want to train our students in. So I hope that's helpful advice. Train yourself, work through capacities, build up intervals, and the music you listen to makes a big difference.
It's a whole new world, and we're teaching children and parents the rules of the road, a way to engage the most powerful media in positive ways to both empower them and help make this a better world. Thank you so much for giving us the information you have today and sharing these ideas with us. We look forward to more healthy collaborations here in Iowa with you. And thank you for joining us today. You can go to our website, ahealthyiowa.org, for more information and news of our upcoming shows. Keep your eye on Mediacom MC22 for our next episode of Surviving Bad, where we explore Iowa's stories of survival, hope, and inspiration on Mediacom MC22, your local programming leader.